Hi everybody, my name's Cody and I love history. And when you love history as much as I do, you end up doing a lot of research and every once in a while, something might have a fact or an image or anything to just a bit incorrect. And it's very small, but it makes me very annoyed. The two things that I see mixed up the most is Elizabethan and Georgian fashions. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys some of the similarities and differences between the two. Hopefully you'll learn something or just enjoy hearing me elaborate on some fashion history if you're interested in that. Disclaimer before we get started. In this video, I'm only going to be talking about trends in England, and because of the Georgian period, some of it will apply to the colonies, but not all of it. Just fair warning. Also, this is going to be solely about royal or nobility, or at least non-peasant fashion. So that's it. Now that's all out of the way. Let's get started. Okay, so in case you didn't know, it's called Elizabethan and Georgian because for Elizabethan, it was during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, which was from 1558 to 1603, and for the Georgians, the four King Georges who ruled one in a row, George the First, Second, Third, and Fourth, and that lasted from 1714 to 1840. Let's get started with makeup. Georgian man's makeup usually contained a pale, painted lead face, some pink blush, usually light pink lip gloss or lipstick, visible darkened eyebrows. They're usually bigger. A beauty spot, and you can't see in this picture, but patches. In case you didn't know, patches are they originated in the Georgian times in order to cover up smallpox scars on your face. You would cut out like red, usually in red or black, and usually made out of like felt or silk or any other material you want to stick on your face. Usually in the shape of like a crescent or a heart or a circle or any general shape you can easily cut out. And you would stick it onto where your smallpox scars are to cover them up. Yeah, that's what patches are. And then darkness on the eyes, usually. Compare that to an Elizabethan man that had light powder, usually more red rather than pink blush, maybe, and thinner groomed eyebrows. Also, let me just add, during the Regency period, which I'll talk about more toward the end of the Georgian period, men wore less makeup and went more towards what the Elizabethan man looks like. But again, the biggest difference you'll see is powder for the Georgians and paint for the Elizabethans, even though they were all made out of lead. And when I say lead, yes, I do mean the very poisonous, very not good to put on your skin chemical or element lead. You shouldn't use it. It's very dangerous and it killed a bunch of people. Okay, women. Good transition, Cody. The Georgian woman, like the Georgian man, have a pale white painted face, pink blush, pink or red lipstick, beauty spot and patches, visible eyebrows, and darkened eyes. The Elizabethan woman, as we see here, again, the pale white lead face, this time with powder rather than paint. So now the eyebrows are covered. Red lipstick, pale pink blush, underneath it, more powder, and usually nothing on the eyes except for maybe some powder and might be darkened, but usually not so much. Now that we are done with makeup, let's move on to hair. For a Georgian man, towards the George II, George III, that period, and so in earlier mid-Georgians was the powdered wig was in style. This is when you think of your George Washington, even though not all of this applies to the colonies, the powdered wig is definitely something that does. Rolls, braids, curls, all of that stuff. Usually fixed on the head and the temples, but it could roll down to the ears or longer, as you see here and here. Also put into like ponytails. And usually no facial hair. Now, I mentioned before the earlier part of the Georgian period because toward the end, like I said, is the Regency period. This is your like Jane Austen novel, if that makes sense, with like usually natural hair, shorter like here or kept in a ponytail, sideburns, usually curly or wavy, especially more in the front, and black or brunette was the color that was in style the most. As for the Regency period, The Elizabethan man, for all of its time though, usually had no wig, as you can see in like William Shakespeare and right here balding. They wouldn't use a wig. Facial hair was in style. Usually your hair was covered by a hat, without any more decoration or adornment. And it was usually cut short, not lower than the ears unless it naturally grew like in the back, but usually nothing too long like the Georgians. For women, for the Georgian woman, the wig was a big deal. That's hard to say. It was usually very tall, usually in gray, white, brown, black, all those sorts of powdered wiggy colors. Rolls, braids, curls, buns, as you can see in all of these many pictures. They are also very, very decorated. Hats, jewels, feathers, clips, headbands. You can also see there was one where it was like an entire wooden ship was like not a real ship, but a model of a ship was in this one wig. It was very decorated. You can also see like fruit, all sorts of stuff could be in a Georgian wig. When you think Marie Antoinette, although it was the same time period, although Marie was in France, it's the same style. Compare that to the Elizabethan woman. Rather than the whites, browns, and blacks and grays, what was in fashion because of the queen herself, Elizabeth, as you see here, red was in style, fellow redhead. Usually your hair natural, but as you get older, or if you got smallpox or something that caused your hair to fall out, you'd use a wig. It was usually more of a rounded silhouette rather than the many curves and bumps of the other ones, made up of like curls, rolls, less like braids and buns in the Elizabethan times, and decorated with gems and pearls. Pearls you'll see a lot because one, age of exploration, so everyone was in the sea. Yeah, a lot of pearls and redhead. Now let's go to clothing. For the Georgian man, this is something you also see in the colonies, and while not all of the stuff applies to the colonies, like I mentioned earlier, this is another one that's definitely. The tailcoat was in fashion. So long waistcoat over a shirt and vest. In the Regency periods, you'll see a strong collar, whereas earlier you'll see it cut shorter like this. Same color matching knee breeches, which appropriately named as they go to the knee, with tall socks that meet them around there. A jabot, which is the thing that sticks out right there at the top of the vest, and lace cuffs on the side. You can see that there. Toward the end of the Georgian period, you'll see padding on their calves and legs. The royals usually had fur-lined coats or crowns. Fur is a big deal. And I will always mention this, buttons, buttons, buttons. The tailcoat was all buttons. You can see all of these. There's one thing this all have in common. It's the sole amount of buttons as pictured right here. You can see the vest, the coat, the sleeves, the pants, all of it, buttons. For an Elizabethan man, there were slightly less buttons, although they were still there. A high collar, often covered or in addition to, like in this picture, had a ruff. A ruff, you can see right here, it's the round thing that goes around your neck. It's also known as a Shakespearean collar, if you wanted to look that up. Long fitted sleeves that were under like a vest that was usually high collared, as I mentioned, more fitted. It looks a lot, if you notice like a chest plate, like in armor, it looks like that. Large pants fitted at the ankles or knees. They're very baggy. And on those large pants would have a pants pocket or a belt loop for holding some sort of weapon, usually a sword or dagger. Starting early as in childhood, when boys would go to school, they would have to carry a dagger with them. And as I mentioned, there are buttons, not nearly as many in the Georgian man though. A Georgian woman was very extra, very over dramatic, if you will. It's definitely a showstopper. A very, very tight corset for the Georgian woman that would go into a very large hoop skirt, which creates the V-shaped waistline. The sleeves would go either elbow length or longer. The hoop skirt is very, very large, often multi-layered, as you can see right here. Had a petticoat underneath and all sorts of decorations like the hair, bows, buttons, gems, flowers, pretty much anything on a Georgian woman's gown. An Elizabethan woman, again, pictures of Elizabeth, she was a style icon. A fitted ruff, again, as you can see here, around a high collar, or sometimes they would have like a looser, wider one in which a ruff kind of wrapped around the collar and around the back rather than attaching all the way around the neck. A fitted corset top. They also wore corsets for Elizabethans, but not nearly as tight and noticeable as the Georgians were. Usually puffy or poet sleeves rather than fitted. Instead of a petticoat underneath, there was a farthingale. And again, with a hoop skirt, except it wouldn't have a V as noticeable. You can see a slight one here, but it's not nearly as dipped as the Georgian is. And then more gems and pearls for decorations. You can also see sometimes they would have lace on the cuffs, but not nearly as much as, say, a man would. All right, everyone, that concludes our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something about Georgian or Elizabethan or just history in general. Let me know what you want to see from me in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. And I'll see you next time. Bye.